Hey guys, welcome back. We recently did a webinar. Our very own Rob McCarthy and Mike Altman from IBW, In Building Wireless Advisors, did a webinar recently on deployment pitfalls of an ERRCS system and how to avoid them. Um, they answered as many questions as they could during the webinar, but there were a whole bunch that were emailed over separately. So we wanted to make sure that we took our time and got the answers out to some of those questions, make sure we live our core values as a company of spreading RF knowledge, of being gracious and authentic with our expertise. So we're back again to answer some of those questions for you today. So the first one I've got here is, how do you design ERRCS systems to minimize the near far effect? Greg, you got one for us?
Oh, sure. That's always a real easy one. Actually, the easiest way to deal with near far effect and minimize it is to design the system old school, the way that they were intended to be designed, which is you do not allow the uplink to go into automatic leveling, or OLC, ALC. There's different types of terminology, but basically you want to make sure that the portable that is within the near field of the antenna and the portable that's away from the antenna, that neither one of those causes the signal booster itself to have to modify its operation. And so you're basically designing for the booster to run at a fixed gain level that does not change when a portable gets closer to the antenna or farther away from the antenna. That would be service antennas.
Okay. So there is kind of automatic function on some of these systems that tends to screw things up if
Well,
you
I think
turn it
one of the
on.
things that ends up happening is that because there's a mentality that we design for downlink, that we end up trying to extend the coverage to far greater levels than the uplink can withstand, without going into automatic leveling. And there's a lot of reasons you don't want to do that. Uh, uh,
So what you're saying, if you set it at one standard, right, one level, and then somebody does bring a portable or something like this, so that doesn't affect it at
well,
all, huh?
you can set, if you design the system properly, you can get a portable within 10 foot of an antenna and a portable within 50 foot of an antenna, give her, that kind of range. So like your 40-foot radius, and the amplifier just runs as if it's normal. It's just like the microphone set at one level, and you're not getting too close and you're not getting too far. And yes, the signal is varying a little bit, but most HJs, I mean, most people understand, as a portable walks away from a site, the signal gets less, and as it gets closer, it gets to a stronger signal. But because of the FCC rules on emission standards, they have to limit the maximum amount of power that a amplifier can produce. And so it's all about design. It's really all about designing the system so that the portable, no matter where the portable is in the room, it doesn't cause the signal booster to go into a reduced gain situation. I mean, they always talk about, well, if you read the fire code, it says that the design has to be able to handle reduced gain situations, which is essentially saying don't make it go into reduced gain situations, is what it really means. But, because if you have to be able to accommodate for it, that means you've got to design for reduced gain. So you might as well reduce the gain to begin with and then design it properly so you're not having, in other words, this reduced gain situation shouldn't be occurring, and they're telling you you need to design for a reduced gain situation. Why don't you just design for the lower gain situation to begin with, and you're done?
So, from a practical perspective, what are we talking about? Are we talking about more antennas? More antennas are needed in the system. Don't under design the system. Is that what
Yeah,
you're
don't
getting at?
under design the system. Make sure you have enough service antennas to support the limited, the limited dynamic range that you have on your uplink. Yeah,
And obviously, for different, it depends on the spectrum that is being utilized for that public safety licensee, right? So, a VHF, UHF is going to be a different antenna density than, say, an 800 system. Is that accurate?
yeah, That would be correct. There would be you can use less antennas the lower frequency in the lower in frequency you go. Yes.
Gotcha.
So
Gotcha.
VHF would require less antennas, but not to the extent that people think it is. I mean, it's not well, it's significant, but it's not as significant as one might think. That's all I'm saying. So.
Sometimes they're still under design
And I
because
think,
of that.
people are always looking for a silver bullet. So is there a rule of thumb when it comes to antenna density?
Well, I mean, a lot of the HJs now are coming a maximum 60-foot radius, 50 to 60-foot radius. So, and that's at 800 megs. But I mean, some are even going less. But that's a pretty good number. If you separate your antennas 100 foot apart maximum in a large building, so that they're no more than 100 foot away from each other, 50-foot radius, you're pretty safe. You're pretty safe with not having that as being a problem. Now there are also the other side that you have to calculate for is your actual path loss between the BDA and the donor site. So if you're a real long way away, right, like you're 12 miles away from your donor site, you are probably going to have to use more antennas, service antennas, to support a no near far effect than if say you're 2 miles away. And that's just it's a mathematical. You've got more loss to overcome when you're in your link. So you've got to accommodate for both those functions, frequency as well as how far away you are from the site. The FCC only allows you 5 watts of power, so you can't legally run any more than 5 watts. So if you're too far away to get back to a site with 5 watts of power, you can turn the gain up all day long, but you're still never going to be able to legally operate more than 5 watts of power. So
Interesting.
this is
So
unfortunately, it's a whiteboard discussion more than it is. It's really difficult to talk about it just in general terms, but it means
well,
higher indoor antenna density, higher service antenna density.
gotcha. And there are two factors there. So there's frequency, there's also the distance from the donor site. Now, let me ask you this. If you're not using a bidirectional amplifier or signal booster, right? If you had a different solution that you were utilizing, like a fiber fed DAS, for instance, is near far effect still a consideration, or is this a function of having a bidirectional amplifier working with the macro network?
Okay, if we talk about using a base station with a passive antenna system in the building, right? You have a base station there. You don't really have a near far issue to be concerned with. If you're using a fiber DAS, there is the potential for near far problem because there is going to be, even assuming it's attached to a base station, right? I mean, say you got a base station that's feeding a fiber DAS. Depending on the DAS equipment itself, it may have some automatic gain controls you have to be concerned with. But the near far effect is far less predominant. Where it happens the worst is in a over the air donor fed BDA because you really only have a small window of maximum and minimum uplink signals that can be used. Relative to connecting to a base station, where a base station you may be able to go from say minus 110 to minus 30. So that's what that would be 70, 80 dB of range. You could have a signal that was as low as minus 110 and as high as minus 30, and the base station isn't going to care. But if you try to pull that,
All right, so basically, once you get to this part of the conversation, then you need
yeah,
to call an
well,
expert.
it is
That's
it
what I'm
is a
getting. I'm getting.
design exercise for sure. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
and I think that this is another thing that we talk about, which is there are software platforms out there, right, that can be utilized like IBWave for doing design, but it really is still important that whoever's interacting with that design tool has good RF knowledge and experience and understanding, because like any software, garbage in, garbage out, right? So if things aren't configured correctly, if you haven't taken all of the variables into consideration, Something might look good in the software platform that you just have to have that kind of baseline knowledge and experience to say, no, there's a red flag here. I'm seeing something that's not gonna jive in the real world, right? So having that real experience and expertise to go along with the cool software platforms like that is important.
And I would add one other thing that currently I do not believe there's a software platform out there that actually looks at the uplink and can model near far. I mean, within the software platform. And I might be wrong on this, but I don't think there is anything. So the engineer who's doing it has to really understand what's going on.
Understood. Well, hey, if anybody's watching this and disagrees and wants to call us out, don't hesitate to leave a comment in the comment section. Let us know if there is a software platform that's doing that out there right now. But I think that's all. That's about all we have time for now. But make sure you subscribe to the Pulse YouTube page, and that way you'll get updates anytime we have additional Q&A answers that we're coming out with. There will be more coming soon. We've got plenty more questions to answer, and we want to make sure that we're being gracious and authentic with our RF expertise and helping to make our industry a more effective industry. So thanks, guys. Appreciate you.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.